Isaiah 7, looking at verses 10 through the 25. 16 verses here to look at for the day. The topic or the focus in which we will be looking at, in which Isaiah is addressing, is deliverance through God's presence. Delivery or deliverance through God's presence. We saw in the day before, or in our last session, about God's deliverance through or from threatening enemies. Deliverance through God's or from the enemies that were threatening Judah. King Ahaz, who was king of Judah, he had enemies such as, and two notable ones, one being Syria and the other one being Ephraim, the northern kingdom. They had formed an alliance to come and to destroy, to break up, to at least divide Judah, the kingdom of Judah, between them both. But the Lord turned to them and he told Ahaz that he was not to be afraid, he was to take courage. The exact wording which is used here is that they were to stay calm and to be unafraid, not to be demoralized by two smoldering stumps of firewood. Now, I don't know if Syria and or Judah or Ephraim had heard what the Lord had described them both as two smoldering stumps of firewood. If they did know what the Lord called them, the God of Israel, the God of Judah, the God of Ahaz called them, then probably that would have put more fire underneath them to push them to do what they had intended to do. However, God said that he would deliver them. Just that they needed, they who being Ahaz the king and Judah, the people, the tribe, the kingdom of Judah, all they had to do was to have faith, and not just faith, but firm faith, and that they would be firmly established. And so we're going to be looking at in our reading that deliverance would be made through God's presence, that God's presence would be with them. But we know already Ahaz. I'm sure you've heard about the king Ahaz. I'm sure you have. Remember, I'm not going to run ahead of this. I'm not going to run ahead at all. But obviously, I think I'm speaking to people who has an understanding and knows the biblical account of King Ahaz. He was not a nice man at all. He was rather ungodly. He was stubborn, selfish, and he did things the way how he wanted to be done. Yes, he didn't follow the Lord at all, even though God himself, and we will see, God himself spoke to Ahaz. He spoke to him. Obviously he spoke to him through Isaiah the prophet. But God spoke to him, tried to reassure him, but Ahaz didn't listen. But anyway, we're going to find that out. We're going to find that out, obviously. And again, I want to refer you to 2 Chronicles chapters 28 all the way down to chapters 32, because you'll get a firm understanding of what I'm talking about, where Ahaz, the king of Judah, is concerned. But let me read verse 10 to 25 of Isaiah chapter 7. Adonai spoke again to Ahaz. He said, "Ask Adonai, your God, to give you a sign. Ask it anywhere from the depths of Sheol to the heights above." But Ahaz answered, "I won't ask. I won't test Adonai." Verse 13. Then the prophet said, "Listen here, house of David. Is trying people's patience such a small thing for you that you must try the patience of my God as well? Therefore, Adonai himself will give you a sign, will give you people a sign. The young woman will become pregnant, bear a son, and name him Emmanuel. God is with us. By the time he knows enough to refuse evil and choose good, he will have to eat. He will have to eat curdled milk and wild honey. Yes, before the child knows enough to refuse evil and choose good, the land whose two kings you dread will be left abandoned. Adonai will bring the king of Ashur on you, your people, and your father's house. These will be the days worse than you've ever known, since Ephraim broke loose from Judah. Yes, when that day comes, Adonai will whistle for the fly in the farthest streams of the Nile in Egypt, and for the bee in the land of Ashur. They will come and settle, all of them, in steep valleys and holes in the rocks, and on all thorn bushes and brambles. When that day comes, Adonai will shave with a razor hired beyond the Euphrates River, that is, with the king of Ashur, the head and the hair between the legs, and get rid of the bread as well. When that day comes, a man will raise a young cow and two sheep. Will they produce in abundance? No. He will have to eat curdled milk. Instead, everyone left in the land will eat curdled milk and wild honey. When that day comes, wherever there was once 1,000 grapevines worth 1,000 pieces of silver, there will be only briars and thorns. One will go there to hunt with bow and arrow, because all the land will be briars and thorns. You won't visit hills once worked with a hoe, for fear of the briars and thorns. It will be good only for pasturing cattle and being trampled down by sheep. I'm sure you're getting the picture here of what the Lord now is saying through Isaiah. Now, again, there's a verse of this passage here that is very, very familiar to you, I'm quite sure. And that is verse 14. It says, "Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." That's very familiar, isn't it? It's something that preachers preach at a particular time of the year. But here, it's placed in the passage that more or less is trying to give encouragement only, but at the same time, prophetically, there's a message at the same time being prophetically given that great destruction is going to come upon Judah. Now, if you haven't seen that, I would suggest that you reread that again. Ahaz, seeing the enemy around him, he's been told to have faith, firm faith in God. At the same time, from verses 10 onwards, we're then being told that God himself speaks. "Ask thee a sign of the Lord thy God." Now, that's a direct statement, Adonai spoke to Ahaz and said, "Ask Adonai your God." This is God saying to Ahaz that he used to ask Adonai, his God, to give you a sign. Ask it anywhere you want to. He said, either ask it from Sheol, from the depths of Sheol to the heights above, to the heavens above. Yes. Ask the sign. Ask it either in the depth or in the height above. Now, Ahaz refused to believe God's promise. If he had trusted the Lord, he would have he would have broken his alliance with Assyria and led the people to seek the Lord. But Ahaz was an unbeliever, a leader who put his trust and his total trust in the arm of flesh. Because Ahaz had committed or continued in unbelief, the Lord soon sent Isaiah, the prophet, as we have read, with a second message. In a last attempt to stir Ahaz, the Lord made an unusual offer. We have not read of this offer before. At least I can't remember. You may have in our travels, in our daily travels here throughout the books. Yeah. But let's see what an unusual offer is. Ahaz could ask the Lord for a supernatural sign. No matter what that sign was, God would grant the king's request. But Ahaz rejected the offer, using the excuse that he would not put the Lord to a test. Now, I know that some of us would have jumped to that request or to that opportunity. We would. I certainly would have, and I certainly would, even in our day and time, ask the Lord to do something for me. But Ahaz didn't. Ahaz was really a wicked king, very unbelieving. In this statement, the king was exposing a wicked, hypocritical heart. Although God's words forbids putting the Lord to a test, this offer was being made by God himself. I mean, when you look at Deuteronomy 6 and 16, what does that say to us? Let's turn to that. Deuteronomy 6:16, it says, "Ye shall not tempt the Lord thy God as ye tempted him in Massah." Now, to tempt God in that instance, it would be that men, as men are doing today, men ungodly and unrighteously tempt God as if to prove himself. But in this instance, God is requesting Ahaz to prove him, to test him. Yeah, to test him. So when God makes a promise to a person, that individual is not putting God to a test by claiming the promise. Ahaz's refusal was not due to his concern for obeying God's word. Ahaz was a wicked ruler, a man who wanted nothing at all to do with God. Now, I understand that we may not have. We've just started. Isaiah. We have not really known much about Ahaz because Ahaz has been, if I can use the word, thrust upon us in chapter 7, as we have said, and as we know, as we have just started more or less. So we haven't really known a lot about Ahaz, and we will, I promise you. And it would be a good idea, at least, for you to look at that, even though I'm not asking you to do it because you need to get brownie points from it or anything like that. But it'd be good to know really who Ahaz done. And I'm not doing an in-depth study of Ahaz either, but it'd be good to just get a good understanding, a better understanding of Ahaz than me just saying he was a wicked ruler and he was a man who was very hypocritical in heart and in nature. Okay? He was ungodly. But God wanted more or less for Ahaz to completely put his trust in him. Here the nations were around Judah. They were going to um, attack Judah. They were going to ransack the Holy Land and God's house. And God was not going to allow that to happen. Ahaz had placed his trust in another nation, in another empire. Yes, you had Syria and you had Samaria or Ephraim. You had the Assyrian Empire also that Ahaz had placed his trust in. So that goes without saying right now. I've told you now that he placed his trust in the Assyrian king. Instead of making an alliance with the God of Judah, the God of his father David, he didn't. He placed his trust in a mere man. And God was saying, listen, I can only deliver you when my presence is with you. And that is where that promise comes. Verse 14. Behold, a servant shall conceive, bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. And what does Emmanuel mean? God with us. A hint. This is prophetic. It can be used, and was used by one of the apostles, Matthew, yes, in his writings, um, as he wrote about the birth of Christ. God, Adonai, was more or less saying again to Ahaz, I am with you. Just put your trust. I am with you. No birth of a son needed to be born at that time. He was prophetically, God or Isaiah was prophetic in his communication to Ahaz. But again, what God was saying, put your trust in me. I am with you. Break off your alliance with the Assyrian Empire. Put your trust in me. Syria and Ephraim, they are led by mere men. Their flesh. They won't last. They will not survive. And that again was given in the early part of chapter 7. However, when you read on further, it tells us more or less um, in verse 18 or verse 16, let me say. Yes, before the child knows enough to refuse evil and choose good, the land whose two kings you dread will be left abandoned. Adonai will bring the king of Ashur on you, your people, and your father's house. These will be days worse than any you've known since Ephraim broke loose from Judah. So here, again, God is prophetically giving a message, and Isaiah is being prophetic in what is going to happen to Judah. And he describes it also very well. They will come, settle all of them in steep valleys and holes in the rocks, on all thorn bushes, brambles. When that day comes, Adonai will shave, that is with the king of Ashur, the head and the hair between the legs, and get rid of the bread as well. When that day comes, a man will raise a young cow and two sheep. Will they produce in abundance? No. Verse 22. He will have to eat curdled milk. And between 22 and 25, it shows how desperate the land of Judah is going to become. That again is speaking of a day of judgment, the day of the Lord. It's pointing again, if I can be clear to say, it's pointing again to when Babylon is going to raise, and when I say raise, I don't mean raise up, raise completely, level, so to speak, the kingdom of Judah and destroy the temple of God that is in Jerusalem. Isaiah had a tough time. And we can see the king. We are now getting into I can say, just like um, in Jeremiah, there seems to have been a confrontation between Isaiah and Ahaz. Jeremiah, remember Jeremiah and Zedekiah, and Zedekiah, Zedekiah, I believe it is, the king of Judah. Ahaz was also a difficult individual that the prophet of God had to deal with. Stubborn, self-willed, wicked, and not serving God at all, not serving idols, and even um, committing human sacrifice. It was a terrible time for the servant of God, and it is also going to be, I believe, there's going to be some similarities. I don't know how the similarities are going to be, but even in our day, our mankind has, I believe, as far as we can see, has gone to the depths of human. Um, of, there is no evidence. I would say I don't have any evidence of human sacrifice, but there has been talk of it, and idol worship. Man has really gone low, and I would even suggest that man is going to go lower still, to the depths of sin. Sin has really brought man into the very lowest of the pit. When man was not designed, he was not made for that at all. He was made to give God glory. Deliverance through God's presence. We need the presence of God with us. We need the presence of God to be established around us, within us, in us. We need the presence of God. Emmanuel means God with us. And even though it's very much prophetic in that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, was born amongst us, for us, with us, and is also he is our redemption in that he shed his blood for us, but he is still with us. He's away to prepare that place, but he is still with us. The Spirit of the Lord is with us. We have experienced deliverance. Deliverance will always be with us when he is here, and when we firmly put our faith and our trust in him. Something that Ahaz did not do. But on our part, as messengers of the Most High, we need to continue to proclaim the message of righteousness, a message of godliness, a message that we must place our hand in our hand in his hand. Firmly, we must place our hand in his firmly. And I would always say here that without firm faith, we will not be firmly established. We need to have firm faith. Aim to have firm faith. May God bless you. Be encouraged. And we will continue in our discourse in chapter 8 in our next passage. God bless.